I was reborn together with Ethan Owens. In my previous life, I was the little sister he personally chose from the orphanage, and later, the wife who grew old by his side. In this life, when Mr. and Mrs. Owens once again reached out their hands to me just like before, teenage Ethan coldly stopped them. "Mom, Dad, don't take her. I don't want her. I want this girl to be my sister." He held the hand of the girl standing beside me, the adopted daughter of the Walker family who had died young in our previous life. His gaze toward me was ice cold. In the last life, you stole Lily's life and caused her to die miserably, so this time it's your turn to experience the hell she went through. At that moment, I finally understood. So this time, he wanted to play the knight saving the princess, slaying the evil dragon. "Come with me?" I looked at Mrs. Walker standing in front of me, then turned to the man who had once lived with me for 15 years, now resolutely holding that girl's hand as he walked away. I nodded slightly. "That's fine. In this life, I want to live differently too." I walked out of the orphanage. The Owens family hadn't left yet. The moment Ethan saw me, he stiffened and immediately pushed the girl into the car, glaring at me. "Emily Owens," he said sharply, "even if you kneel and beg me, I still won't take you with us. The Owens family doesn't welcome you. A thief like you should stay with the Walkers, those people who eat others alive." He shoved me hard and slammed the car door shut with a loud bang. I stumbled, almost falling. When I finally steadied myself, the Owens family's cars had already driven far away. Dust and exhaust swirled in the wind, stinging my eyes until I could barely keep them open. A black Maybach stopped right in front of me. The window rolled down, revealing the frosty, elegant face of Mrs. Walker. "You want to go to the Owens house?" she asked. I shook my head. "The Walker family is good enough." Mrs. Walker gave me a faint, indifferent glance. "Name? Emily," I answered softly. "From now on, you'll be Emily Walker." Her tone was short, but I understood perfectly what she meant. I quickly got into the car and obediently said, "Yes, Mom." Mrs. Walker raised an eyebrow slightly, said nothing more, and leaned back in her seat to rest. I stayed quiet too. The car drove into the Walker estate. I followed Mrs. Walker inside, watching her set down her handbag and glance upstairs as if addressing someone. "Jason, this is your new sister, Emily Walker." I froze and instinctively looked up. Leaning against the railing on the second floor was a teenage boy, handsomer than Ethan, his features so refined they almost didn't seem real. I didn't know how long he had been standing there watching us. I was stunned. So this was Jason Walker? In my previous life, not long after I joined the Owens family, Jason had been sent abroad. I didn't see him again until many years later, when he had already inherited the Walker family's business. But his once handsome face had been ruined, and with his ruthless methods, he had become known in the business world as Reaper Walker. Back then, I had greeted him politely, "Hi, brother." But now Jason didn't respond at all. He simply leaned against the railing with that cold, distant expression. "Don't mind him," Mrs. Walker said. "He doesn't like to talk." She called a maid to show me around the house, then left. As I followed the maid toward my room, for some reason I turned around, and my eyes met Jason's still, lifeless gaze. Startled, I hadn't even managed to smile before he looked away coldly and turned back into his room. I had been living with the Walker family for more than a month. Except for the first day at the orphanage, I hadn't seen Mrs. Ty Walker again. Jason, on the other hand, I sometimes saw during meals. Every time I would greet him sweetly, "Hey, brother." But he never once answered me. Even so, I didn't mind, because I was very, very busy. Although Mrs. Walker rarely appeared, I could still feel her quiet presence in every corner of the house. But my schedule was packed full, arranged entirely by Mrs. Walker herself. I had etiquette lessons, dance classes, horseback riding training, and it was right in the middle of summer vacation. From morning till night, I was so busy that my feet barely touched the ground. Even Miss Chen, one of the housemaids, couldn't help but feel sorry for me when she saw me come back from riding practice covered in bruises. "Miss, why don't I talk to Madam and ask her to let you rest for today?" she said gently. I slipped on my riding boots and shook my head. No need. When Mrs. Walker brought me home that day, she made it very clear, children of the Walker family are born to be exceptional, even if you're adopted. Meanwhile, the young lady from the Owens family didn't have to lift a finger. Miss Chen sighed and handed me my bag. They've been having fun all morning over there. I heard the whole Owens family went abroad for vacation this summer. I knew she said that to comfort me, to remind me that I wasn't getting the carefree childhood I should have had. Taking the bag from her hands, I smiled. I'm not tired. I want to learn. Maybe to others the Walker family was like hell, but to me, it wasn't. The Walkers were an old, powerful family with deep roots and vast influence, not the kind of nouveau-rich household like the Owens. Here, I could become better, stronger. Even if the family's relationships were complicated, even if they didn't truly accept me, even if Mrs. Walker was cold and strict and Jason Walker distant and aloof, I still wanted to prove myself. As I was lost in thought, a snow-white cat suddenly darted toward my feet. A girl's irritated voice followed right after. Snowy, you've got the wrong person again. Come back here. Ethan, help me catch her. This silly girl's running off again. I bent down to scoop up the cat, then looked up, right into Ethan Owens' eyes. He was walking toward me, smiling fondly at the girl calling out to him. But when he saw me, his smile froze. Disgust filled his expression. So you're still haunting me? He sneered. Unbelievable, like a ghost that won't stay dead. He didn't bother to hide the malice in his tone. Don't think that, because you're here, I'll suddenly feel soft toward you. Keep dreaming, Emily. Before I could respond, a cheerful voice cut in. Emily. Lily Owens ran up in her frilly princess dress, her eyes lighting up. Wow, I can't believe it. Even after leaving the orphanage, I still get to see you. She glanced toward the car parked not far behind me. Is that car waiting for you? Taking Snowy from my arms, she looked past me, then her face went pale. Oh my God, don't tell me the Walker family actually adopted you? I was about to answer when something around her neck caught my attention. The key-shaped pendant on her necklace. My eyes froze on it for a moment. Lily noticed my gaze immediately and lifted her hand to cover it. I pretended not to notice, nodding calmly. Yes, the Walkers. So now your name's Emily Walker, right? She asked, glancing awkwardly at Ethan, whose face had turned grim from embarrassment. I heard the Walkers are terrifying, Lily continued, lowering her voice. They say their heir is seriously ill and mute. Is that true? She pointed curiously toward the Walker mansion behind me. I frowned, ready to correct her, but she didn't give me the chance. Emily, are you learning to shoot? She asked, tilting her head as she eyed my riding and archery outfit. I nodded briefly. Yes, but I have something to do, so I should. Before I could finish, Ethan cut in impatiently. Lily, why are you wasting time talking to someone like her? Let's go. Lily pouted playfully and stuck out her tongue at me. Don't mind him, Emily. He's not usually like this. He's really gentle most of the time. I don't know what's gotten into him today. Ethan, wait for me. She grabbed her skirt and ran after him. I stood there in silence for a moment, then turned and walked away. Behind me, their conversation drifted to my ears on the breeze. Ethan and Lily were talking. The Walkers are way too strict. Emily is the same age as me, and she has to study every single day. Look at her, bruises all over. It's so pitiful. Lily's voice was full of concern. Humph. Ethan's tone was sneering. What use is it for a girl like her to learn those things? Some people just don't have the fortune to enjoy life. Our Lily only needs to be a beautiful princess in this life. That's enough. Daughters of the Owens shouldn't have to suffer like that. Lily cooed. Yes, Mom and my brother give me the best life. Suffering isn't for us, Ethan replied. So in the Owens' eyes, effort equals hardship. I curled my lip. In my previous life, Mr. and Mrs. Owens had indeed spoiled me, but they never supported me learning any real skills. When I wanted to learn riding and archery, they opposed it. What if I fell and left scars? How would I find a husband later? When I wanted to learn self-defense, they refused. What respectable daughter would learn those things? They had bodyguards. Who would dare bully the Owens child? Later, when I asked to study business and finance, they said, why learn so much? The Owens already have a son. That's enough. Outwardly, they indulged me endlessly, but in truth, they raised me to be a silk-wrapped doll dependent on others. By contrast, my foster mother at the Walkers told me plainly, children of the Walker family must learn everything and compete for everything. Summer vacation flew by in the blink of an eye, and the first day of school came quickly. My foster mother had already enrolled me in the international school where Jason studied, the same school Ethan and I had attended in my previous life. On the first day, I arrived early and sat in the car. When Jason opened the door, I smiled and greeted him. "Hi, Jason. Mom said from now on we'll go to school together." Jason's movement stalled for a second, then he said nothing and sat as far away as possible. On the second day, I did the same. The third day, the fourth. Like that for 2 months. I noticed something. Although Jason never replied to me, occasionally if I was late for breakfast and rushed out of the mansion, I would find Jason still standing by the car with his bag, waiting. I hid my surprise and curled my lips in a smile. He's so kind. Whenever that happened, Jason would glance at me with his usual cold indifference, and then turn and get in the car without a word. Only this once, when stepping into the car, he put his right foot in before mine. The slight curve at the corner of his mouth, such a small change, but it was unbelievably endearing. That day after school, I waited a long time in front of the teaching building, but Jason didn't come out. My calls went unanswered. Growing anxious, a bright flash of memory struck me. In my previous life, around this exact time, a major incident had happened at the school gate. I had been buried in my studies, trying to keep up with the international school's pace, only catching fragments of classmates' gossip. Something about someone from the Walker family causing trouble. Rumors that the Walker heir had been attacked and disfigured back in high school. Could it be today? Was something happening now? Not enough time. I sprang into action. I quickly messaged the driver to tell him that if he didn't see me at the school gate, he must come find me immediately. Then I darted toward the alley behind the school, shouting, "Jason, don't you dare get hurt." When I arrived, Jason was pressed against a wall, surrounded by a gang of thugs. "Ha ha, the Walker brat really is mute, huh? No matter how much you hit him, he won't make a sound," one sneered. "If he's mute, he can't report us. What a relief. You want to pick a fight with me? Make us pay for this little punk acting all high and mighty." Another kid, clearly a student, spat and then pulled out a box cutter, aiming to cut Jason's face. My heart leapt. My eye caught a baseball bat lying on the ground. I inhaled sharply to steady myself, then shouted and launched forward. "I've already called police." I barreled into them swinging. Luckily, my recent PE classes had been intense, and I'd been practicing hard. Those thugs didn't expect it and were thrown into confusion, scattering under my onslaught. When the thugs heard me shout that I had called the police, they began to back off. "Damn it, guess this kid got lucky today," one of them spat, cursing a few more times before they finally turned and left. As soon as they disappeared, I rushed over to check on Jason. There was a cut on his face, thankfully not deep, but his arms and legs were covered in bruises. "Jason, hang in there, I'll get you home," I said, trying to help him up. But before I could steady him, a vicious kick slammed into my side, knocking me backward to the ground. "Damn it, Trent, I told you this brat was lying. She never called the cops," one of them shouted. "That little bitch, lying already, huh? A mute and a liar, what a perfect pair." The guy called Trent barked, kicking me repeatedly in the back. Pain shot through me so sharply I couldn't even lift my head. Through the blur of tears, I saw Jason's terrified eyes. I forced a trembling smile and whispered softly, "Don't be afraid." Jason froze, his gaze locking on me. I shielded him with my body and refused to take even half a step back, though each blow to my spine felt harder than the last. Just as the next strike was about to land, Jason, who hadn't fought back once until then, suddenly moved. With a burst of desperate strength, he lunged forward and bit the arm of the thug nearest to me. The sudden attack stunned the group for a few seconds, but Jason's resistance didn't last long. Outnumbered, he was quickly overpowered, thrown to the ground as fists pounded into his head and chest. One of them even pulled out an iron rod. Was it really going to end like this again? At that moment, a voice and the sound of footsteps echoed from outside the alley. Was it the driver? I tried to open my eyes, hope flaring, and saw a pair of white sneakers at the mouth of the alley. The person wearing them stood against the light. The thugs glared toward him. "What the hell are you looking at, kid?" one of them snarled. That wasn't the driver. My heart lurched. I forced my eyes open wider, trying to see the person's face. But blood blurred my vision. Then a distant voice called out, "Ethan, why are you standing there? The strawberry cake shop's this way." He stayed silent for a moment, then answered softly, "Yeah, coming." I blinked through tears, whispering faintly, "Ethan." His steps faltered, but in the end, he didn't turn around. He only tightened his grip on Lily's hand and slowly walked away with her. Lily, unable to hold back her curiosity, glanced into the alley and gasped, "Oh my God, Ethan, I think someone's hurt over there." A second later, her eyes were covered by his hand. "Don't look," Ethan said gently. "It's filthy." From far away, through the ringing in my ears, I thought I heard him murmur, "Lily, I found you early this time. I'll protect your innocence. You'll never have to suffer because of the walkers again, and you won't die tragically like before." Through the haze of pain, his words dragged me back to a memory from my past life, the final moments before his death, when he'd whispered, "It's all my fault. If only I had found you sooner." Back then, I thought he was talking about me, about my accident, the miscarriage, my inability to have children. I'd even choked out a promise, comforting him through tears. "It's okay. In the next life, we'll still be together. We'll have children then." But now I realized, the regret in his last life had never been about me. The guilt he carried was because that day, he had been with me, and failed to save Lily Walker. So in this life, he chose to keep her by his side, to protect her from every little harm. He hadn't come here to save me. He'd only come to watch, with his own eyes, how the thief who replaced his beloved Lily was beaten and humiliated. But I remembered hearing the rumors in my past life. After the incident involving the 2 Walker children, Jason was sent overseas while Lily Walker wasn't allowed to go with him. Her standing in the family plummeted afterward. Some girl who knew the truth once whispered that on that day, Jason had risked his life to protect Lily. But she ran away without ever looking back. And yet Ethan still chose to believe that his precious Lily was the innocent one. So Ethan Owens really believed that his precious White Lotus was so pure? A laugh slipped from my lips as I wiped the blood from my face. Then, with what strength I had left, I scrambled to my feet and threw myself forward, clutching tightly onto one of the thug's legs. Even when he kicked and cursed, I refused to let go. "Don't hurt him," I screamed, holding on until my lungs burned and the world started fading to black. My last thought before the darkness swallowed me was that I couldn't let them hurt Jason. When I woke up, a fuzzy head of messy hair was drooping beside my bed. The sharp smell of antiseptic filled the air. I realized I was in a hospital. It seemed the driver had arrived just in time with help. I tried to sit up, but the sudden movement must have startled Jason, because he stirred awake. His long-lashed eyes, so strikingly beautiful, opened and locked onto me without blinking. After a while, he reached out and gently touched the bandage on my forehead. "Does it hurt, little sister?" His voice was hoarse, probably from not speaking for so long, but it wasn't unpleasant. On the contrary, it was deep and warm. I froze in disbelief. Jason Walker was talking to me. I wasn't the only one shocked. Mrs. Walker, who had just opened the door, also stopped short, her expression breaking for the first time from its usual composure. Did Jason just speak?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Jason, can you say something to Mom too?" Jason glanced at her briefly, then turned his eyes back to me, still focused on the wound on my forehead. He didn't say another word. I felt awkward, unsure how to explain. "Mom, earlier he..." She shook her head, eyes glistening. "It's all right. Let him take his time." She didn't press further. Just then, Miss Chen entered with lunchboxes in hand. As we ate, she told us the police had already investigated what happened in the alley. It turned out the attackers were just a few lowlifes from outside school who'd heard about the Walker family's wealth and decided to target Jason. One of them was even a student from our school. The adult offenders were being charged and would serve time, and that student had already been expelled. I nodded, my eyes lingering on Jason, who sat quietly eating his meal. Who would have thought, in our past life, because of a few worthless thugs acting on impulse, a boy like him would end up falling into darkness? Luckily, in this life, he was still safe. When Jason noticed I hadn't touched my food, he looked up at me, puzzled. "Eat," he said softly. Snapping out of my thoughts, I smiled and picked up my chopsticks, placing food in his bowl. "You eat too." Not long after, a nurse came in, scolding Jason for sneaking out of his own room. That was when I realized he had escaped from another ward just to see me. Before he left, he reached out and gently patted my head. "Get well soon, little sister." Such simple words, but everyone in the room, from Mrs. Walker to Miss Chen, had tears in their eyes. Even Miss Chen quietly wiped the corners of hers. After Jason was escorted back to his room, Mrs. Walker didn't leave right away. She stood still, watching his back disappear down the corridor. Today, she wasn't wearing her usual flawless makeup. Without the sharp, commanding aura she normally carried, she looked softer, almost fragile. "Jason wasn't always like this," she murmured, taking a seat beside me. "He used to be such a good boy, steady, composed, better than most kids his age. Everyone called him a genius, not a mute or an autistic child." Her voice trembled slightly, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Everything changed 4 years ago, after that accident." I stared at her, stunned. She went on quietly. "Jason once had a younger sister, Sarah Walker. She was my husband's niece. Her parents died in a car accident, and I took her in as my own. Back then, things were very hard for us. After my husband passed away, the entire Walker group became a juicy target. Everyone wanted a piece of it. I had no choice but to harden myself, to fight back fiercely. And the more ruthless I became, the more enemies I made. 4 years ago, the Walker children were kidnapped. Sarah Walker was only 6 at the time. When she saw her brother being beaten, she threw herself at the kidnapper, biting down hard on his arm and refusing to let go. The man went berserk and struck her over and over on the head with a metal rod. Jason witnessed the entire thing. After they were rescued, he stopped smiling, and he never spoke again. No matter what Mrs. Walker tried, it was useless. Out of desperation, she took a friend's advice to adopt another little girl, hoping it might help him heal. Mrs. Walker walked to the window as she spoke. "You're not the first foster daughter I've taken in," she said softly. "But Jason hasn't opened up to anyone for years. He really likes you." A week later, I was discharged from the hospital and returned to the Walker estate. The way everyone looked at me had changed. Before, I was just a foster child, someone who could stay or leave at any moment. But now, they treated me like a true daughter of the Walkers. Still, my schedule didn't get lighter. In fact, it got even more demanding. Mrs. Walker told me, "You'll enter Walker Corporation one day. If you don't have the skills, how can anyone respect you?" The relatives standing nearby were taken aback. Their gazes toward me carried a mixture of caution and curiosity. I didn't have the mind to care about their opinions. My only worry was Jason, whether he would feel upset about this. But when I glanced at him, I saw him resting his chin on his hand, smiling slightly. "Don't be afraid, little sister. You're the best," he said softly. My eyes burned with tears, and I nodded quickly. "Okay." Mrs. Walker's tone softened too. "Jason, you'd better keep working hard. Be careful, your sister might surpass you. Someday, you might need her protection." "No," Jason jumped up immediately, shaking his head in protest. "I'll protect her." He even showed off a short set of martial arts moves right there in the living room. Ever since that incident at school, Jason had been training harder than ever. Mrs. Walker and I couldn't help but laugh, exchanging glances. Seeing his anxious expression, I smiled faintly. Walker once said that having Jason as a son was her greatest blessing, but wasn't being brought to the Walker family my own blessing too? Time passed quickly. Under the Walker family's careful guidance, I became the kind of daughter parents everywhere envied. On the school's honor board, my name often appeared beside Jason's, who was several grades above me. Meanwhile, Lily Owens, who had been a top student in my previous life, spent her days playing around in this one and never once made it onto the board. And as for Ethan Owens, he was as hopeless as ever. Relations between the Owens and Walkers were already distant, and now they grew even colder. It seemed that in this life, Ethan and I were destined to have nothing to do with each other. Only occasionally, while checking the exam rankings, I would catch a glimpse of Ethan standing behind the crowd, his eyes unreadable. "Ethan, what are you looking at?" Lily would ask curiously. "Our names aren't even up there." "Nothing," he'd reply flatly, before pulling her away by the hand. And so the days went by until I turned 18, on the verge of taking the college entrance exams. Jason, who had already been invited to study abroad 3 years earlier, was now attending university overseas. On the day of my exam, Even though I told him repeatedly not to, Jason abandoned his research project and flew home overnight just to drive me to the test. My sister's exam is more important, he said simply. I had no choice but to let him. When the final test ended, I walked out of the school building and immediately saw him leaning casually against the car. Dressed in a simple black tracksuit, his tall figure and striking looks drew every pair of eyes nearby. Any hope I had of keeping a low profile vanished instantly, because wherever Jason Walker appeared, he was impossible to ignore. It was impossible not to notice him. Jason was no longer the quiet boy everyone used to mock. Now he carried himself with a calm, refined confidence that turned heads wherever he went. Even a single glance from him was enough to make nearby girls blush and whisper. I hurried over, trying to urge him along before he drew any more attention. Jason looked confused but obediently took my bag from my hand. You're not happy I came to pick you up? He asked softly. I didn't have the energy to explain and just pushed him toward the car. That's not it. Didn't we make plans with some friends? If we're late, they'll start complaining. We had arranged to meet with a few childhood friends to celebrate two things: his return from abroad and the end of my college entrance exams. After the meal, someone suggested we all go to the racetrack for fun. Since neither Jason nor I had other plans, we agreed to tag along. At the track, a small race was already underway. I glanced up at the big screen and froze. Who's in the lead? I asked in surprise. Is that Ethan Owens? Someone nearby nodded. Yeah, he's back too, and apparently he's into racing now. I raised an eyebrow. He races? Really? Ethan had always been an average student. He hadn't even taken the college entrance exam like Jason. Instead, he went abroad and somehow earned a degree, the kind you could buy if you had enough money. But he was still the Owens heir, after all. The crowd around us had already recognized him, and the attention was immediate. As if to silence everyone's doubts, the bright red race car at the front roared past the finish line. The man who stepped out squinted slightly, basking in the audience's cheers. He'd lost the boyishness I remembered. His features were sharper, more mature, eerily close to the man he'd been in my previous life. In the family section of the stands, a girl in a frilly princess dress ran up to him, throwing her arms around his neck before planting a kiss on his cheek. Ethan, that was amazing, she giggled. Their closeness left no room for misunderstanding. In my previous life, I had been the Owens' official adopted daughter. I'd gone through countless trials just to stand beside Ethan. But in this life, somehow, he'd convinced his parents not to adopt Lily Owens at all. She now lived with them merely as the daughter of a family friend. So that's how it was. He'd been planning this from the start. The racetrack erupted with cheers as the beautiful couple appeared hand in hand. I clicked my tongue lightly. Looks like the Owens family reserved the entire track today. Let's go, I told my friends, turning to leave. But then the crowd ahead stirred, and before I could react, Ethan and Lily were being ushered toward us by the surrounding onlookers. When our two groups met, Ethan's eyes found mine across the crowd. For a brief second, surprise flickered there. He hesitated then, as if realizing the impropriety, quickly released Lily's hand. Ethan? She called, puzzled by his sudden movement. He turned and glared at me. Emily Walker, what are you doing here? Lily's expression hardened. It had been only a few months since I'd last seen her, yet the look in her eyes had changed. Hostile now, sharp and full of disdain. Before I could say anything, she sneered. Or did you come here because you heard Ethan was back? Did you want to see him race? At that, Ethan's expression froze for a split second, his gaze drifting toward me, careless but knowing, as if to say, so it's true. I was speechless. Did they really think I had nothing better to do? Jason frowned, stepping forward without a word. His tall frame completely blocked me from view. Ethan's eyes darkened at the sight. After a long pause, he finally spoke in an even tone. Emily, Lily's just straightforward. Don't take it personally. Ethan, Lily stomped her foot, glaring at him. Why are you being polite to her? Who knows if she's been following us on purpose? Enough, Lily, Ethan said quietly, cutting her off. Still, his eyes couldn't help flickering toward me again. It was then he seemed to notice. After years apart, I was no longer the same girl. The refinement and quiet confidence the Walkers had instilled in me outshone Lily's petty jealousy completely. One of my friends beside me gave a soft, mocking laugh. You'd better keep an eye on your little princess, Ethan. She seems to think everyone wants a bite of what's hers. Then she smiled faintly. Emily's here to celebrate finishing her exams, not to chase after anyone. I'm here to celebrate finishing my exams, my friend said coolly, not to watch some childish racing show. Her tone carried a subtle, cutting edge. Lily's eyes widened in outrage. What do you mean by that? Ethan just won. How dare you call it childish? Ethan's expression darkened. He had just been basking in his victory, yet now, being mocked in front of everyone, his pride clearly couldn't stand it. Well, he said coldly, his voice dripping with challenge. I didn't expect to see you here, Jason. That race wasn't much of a thrill. How about we make it interesting? Care for a match? Ignoring everyone else, he locked his gaze on Jason Walker. Jason frowned slightly, about to step forward, but I quickly grabbed his sleeve and shook my head. I didn't want to get tangled up with Ethan again. Seeing this, Ethan let out a mocking laugh. What's wrong? Don't tell me you're scared. His taunting words hung thick in the air, sharp enough to slice through the growing tension. Everyone fell silent, uncomfortable but unwilling to answer for Jason. They all knew. He hadn't touched a steering wheel in years. I took a steady breath, loosening my grip. Jason reached out and gently patted my head. "Want to see me win?" he asked quietly. I blinked in surprise, then smiled and nodded. "Yeah, you can do it." Without another word, Jason turned and walked toward the track, not sparing Ethan a single glance. Ethan's face clouded instantly, the look of someone unaccustomed to being ignored. His jaw tightened as he stormed off toward his car, his expression black with fury. The starting gun went off. Ethan's signature red race car shot forward, leaving Jason's sleek black car far behind in an instant. The roar of the engines filled the air, shaking the stands. "No skill at all," Lily scoffed beside me. "He should stick to studying and stop pretending he can race." She turned and smirked. "Falling behind right from the start. How pathetic. You think he can catch up to Ethan?" Her friends chimed in with laughter. I clenched my fists, my anger simmering, but I held my tongue. Instead, I fixed my eyes on the track, silent, waiting. Then it happened. At a sharp turn, Jason executed a perfect late-break drift, smooth, clean, breathtaking. In one flawless move, he overtook Ethan's car and shot across the finish line first. The entire racetrack went dead silent. Lily froze in disbelief, her mouth slightly open. Someone in the crowd muttered, "That maneuver? It looked exactly like Wraith, the champion from last year's international circuit." The murmurs spread like wildfire. They were right. Jason Walker, at just 15, had once won the International Youth Racing Cup. He was called the Young Racing Prodigy. After taking a break for years, he had returned quietly to the circuit, sweeping 3 major championships last year. But he had always raced under an alias, Wraith. His real identity had never been revealed, until now. Jason opened the car door and walked straight toward me. His composure never wavered, his calm presence radiating quiet dominance. Extending his hand, he said simply, "Let's go home, little sister." I smiled, slipped my arm through his and nodded. "Okay." Behind us, I could hear Lily's awkward attempts to comfort Ethan, her voice faltering, and Ethan's furious breathing, heavy and ragged. Not long after, the college entrance exam results were released. I ranked first in the entire country. I wasn't surprised, but Mrs. Walker and Jason were overjoyed. They promised that once my acceptance letter arrived, they'd take me on a trip abroad. I protested, saying I still had courses to finish, but Jason frowned. "Emily, you're pushing yourself too hard. You need to relax," Mrs. Walker agreed. "No matter what happens, remember this. Our family will always be your home." Her words caught me off guard. For a moment, I realized something I hadn't before. Ever since I was reborn, I'd been forcing myself too much, driving myself until I could barely breathe. The fact that Ethan had chosen Lily over me so decisively, it had cut far deeper than I'd admitted. I'd spent every day since trying to prove my worth to the Walkers, terrified of being abandoned again. But now, looking into their warm, reassuring eyes, I felt something melt inside me. I smiled faintly and agreed to go. The day we left for the airport, we happened to run into the Owens family. And judging by the tension in their faces, things between them weren't going well at all. Mr. and Mrs. Owens both looked grim. Ethan Owens's face was impassive, while Lily Owens followed beside him in silence. something rare for her. Word had spread that she had been caught cheating on her exams and her results were voided. The once proud Owens family had become a laughingstock among the elite. Mrs. Walker withdrew her gaze and let out a quiet, cold laugh. They're so afraid of embarrassment that they shipped her overseas before the semester even started. Trying to calm the gossip, I suppose. I blinked in surprise. Lily went abroad already? Is she out of her mind? I thought, what was she thinking, risking something like that? Given her situation, all she needed to do was lie low, study abroad, and get her degree. Why gamble her future? I shook my head and dismissed the thought. It wasn't my concern anymore. When I boarded the plane, I suddenly felt someone's eyes on me. I turned to look, and sure enough, it was Ethan Owens. His expression was complicated, but when our eyes met, he froze for a moment. "Congratulations on being top of the nation," he said. "Thanks," I replied coolly and turned away. Ethan hesitated, then took a step as if to follow. "Emily." Before he could get another word out, Lily clutched his arm tightly, glaring at me with hatred in her eyes. "She doesn't even want to talk to you," she snapped. "Let go," Ethan said, shaking her off sharply. Lily stumbled, falling to the ground. All the frustration and insecurity she'd been suppressing finally exploded. "You've changed. You regret it now, don't you? But you're the one who abandoned her first." Ethan froze in place, her words hitting him like a slap. I walked through the boarding gate without looking back, following the walkers onto the plane, and just like that, we left for Hawaii. Time passed quickly. I entered college and threw myself into learning, determined to transform the resources I'd been given into real ability. By my sophomore year, I founded my own research team of 5. Every member was brilliant, none of them inferior to me. To support me, Mrs. Walker entrusted me with full control of a small subsidiary company under the Walker Corporation. Our first project was a massive success, propelling the company to new heights. Later, our follow-up innovations even allowed the subsidiary to outperform its parent company several times. Before long, I was being called one of the brightest rising stars in the business world. When I graduated, Jason Walker returned from abroad and officially joined the Walker Corporation headquarters. Many outsiders eagerly anticipated a power struggle between the Walkers' biological son and their adopted daughter. They assumed Jason's entry into the main branch while I remained in charge of a subsidiary would spark resentment. But I didn't feel that way at all. Instead, I threw my full support behind him. With both Mrs. Walker and me standing firmly at his side, and with Jason's own extraordinary ability, he soon secured his position in the company. Around that time, the Walker Corporation issued a public announcement. The subsidiary I had managed would officially separate and operate independently under a new name, Luna Corporation. That night, fireworks burst above Luna's headquarters, illuminating the sky. Jason stood beside me and said quietly, "Emily, remember this. Walker Corporation will always be the foundation that supports Luna." I smiled playfully. "Maybe not forever. Who knows? Maybe one day Luna will be the one supporting Walker Corporation." Jason chuckled softly. "You've always been the best, little sister." I tilted my head, looking out at the dazzling city lights below, smiling to myself. This had been the agreement between Mrs. Walker and me. Luna Corporation would belong entirely to me, and I would remain Jason's strongest ally. "Only one company?" someone had once asked me. "Don't you want more? Maybe half of Walker Corporation?" I had just smiled, because by then, I already understood. True power wasn't always about possession, it was about choice. At that moment, Mrs. Walker had arched an eyebrow and said with a faint smile, "Who knows, maybe I'd even agree to that one day." But I shook my head. "What I want," I told her quietly, "is something that belongs entirely to me. Something that belongs only to Emily Walker." After living through 2 lifetimes, I understood one thing clearly. Only what you hold firmly in your own hands can truly be yours. After graduating as an honors student, I was invited back to my university to represent the school in an equestrian and archery competition. For me, it was little more than a rare chance to relax amid my busy schedule. As expected, I won the championship effortlessly. As soon as I stepped down from the podium, the professors and faculty members surrounded me, layer after layer, showering me with praise. It took some effort to slip away from the crowd, only for someone to call out behind me, "Emily, Ethan Owens is here too." It had been years since we'd last met, since he'd returned home and taken over the Owens Corporation. Ignoring Lily Owens's bitter glare, he walked straight toward me, his eyes running over my fitted riding outfit with obvious admiration. "You've become even more remarkable," he said softly, his gaze full of surprise, regret, and longing. That look, it was so familiar. In my previous life, I'd once attended a gala with him. That night, Lily Walker, as the Walkers' adopted daughter, had performed a piano piece on stage. Ethan had looked at her with this exact same expression, odd, wistful, and full of yearning for something that didn't belong to him. I almost laughed out loud. Some things never changed, even after being reborn. Ethan Owens still craved what he couldn't have. I met his eyes briefly, offered a polite nod in greeting, and turned to leave. But he stepped in front of me, blocking my way. His expression darkened. "What if I said we could start over? You'd still be my sister, right?" I froze for half a second, then almost laughed again. How self-centered could one man be? "I don't understand what you're talking about," I said evenly. "If you have too much free time, Mr. Owens, perhaps you should focus on saving your company instead." Ethan's face instantly darkened. I wasn't wrong. Owens Corporation had been in deep crisis lately, its stocks plummeting. In my last life, the company had gone through a similar collapse. Back then, Ethan's pride had kept him from asking for help until it was too late. Out of misplaced affection, I'd once begged Jason Walker, by then the cold and feared Reaper Walker, to help the Owens family. His intervention had saved them, but at a steep price. This time, even though Ethan had been reborn and thought he could rewrite fate, the Owens Corporation's foundations were already rotting from within. Without the Walker's backing, his limited abilities could no longer turn the tide. He was doomed to fail again. I didn't waste another word. I turned to leave, only for a sharp voice to cut through the air. "Emily Walker. Ethan and I are getting engaged soon," Lily Owens shouted, storming up to me. "Can you just stay away from us? Stop showing up everywhere." Her jealousy flared after being ignored too long. She lunged forward, blocking my path, but Ethan pushed her roughly aside. "Enough. What's gotten into you?" he snapped. "You're not helping, just making things worse." Lily stumbled and fell to the ground. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she looked up at Ethan, at the disgust and irritation written plainly on his face. Whatever hope she'd been holding on to shattered completely. "I'm the one causing trouble?" she laughed hysterically, pointing first at him, then at me. "So this is it. You regret it, don't you? You think she'd ever take you back? She's not the same girl anymore. She's Emily Walker now. Who do you think you are? You're the one who chose me, and now you're tired of me already?" Her voice cracked, loud and wild with despair. And then, in that moment, I understood. Lily Owens had been reborn too. No wonder she'd been acting so unstable, so desperate. "Enough, Lily." Ethan's face went pale as he turned toward me, hastily pulling her to her feet. "I'm sorry, she didn't mean. Please don't mind her." But Lily yanked her arm free, shouting through tears. "Sorry? You're calling me your sister now? We're supposed to be engaged, and you're calling me your sister?" Ethan's brow furrowed, his expression a mix of guilt and frustration. But for once, he couldn't find a single word to defend himself. But Ethan still forced himself to remain calm, trying to reason with her. Lily wouldn't listen. Their argument grew louder and louder until I could no longer pretend not to notice. I quietly slipped away, leaving the chaos behind. Only when I got into Jason's car did I finally exhale. He glanced at me, a teasing smile on his lips. "What's wrong? You look like you've just seen a ghost." "I did," I said seriously. "A pair of them, actually. And they were terrifying." Jason chuckled. "Come on, it was just an event. How unlucky could you be to run into them of all people?" I sighed. "Apparently, very unlucky." Over the next few years, Luna Corporation flourished. Working hand in hand with Walker Enterprises across multiple industries, we became even stronger together. Our success was undeniable, and I quickly earned the title of a new generation business elite, no longer the Walker's adopted daughter, but Emily Walker of Luna Corporation. Meanwhile, the Owens Corporation was collapsing. They'd been forced to sell assets, liquidate branches, and even surrender shares to keep the company alive. Because of the kindness the Owens family had once shown me in my previous life, I had quietly instructed both Luna and Walker Enterprises not to take advantage of their fall, not to crush them the way others in the industry were eager to. It was the only mercy I could offer. Even so, it barely kept them from complete ruin. I met Ethan Owens again at a corporate bidding conference. I sat on the panel of judges. Ethan and Lily Owens were among the bidders below. When he noticed me from afar, his confident facade faltered. He looked away, avoiding eye contact. Once, the Owens family had been a pillar of the business world. Now, they were just another company fighting for survival. I didn't linger on him any longer. During the intermission, I went to the restroom to wash my hands. As I was drying them, I caught sight of Lily quietly stepping in behind me. "Can we talk?" she asked. I gave her a short glance, then calmly folded the paper towel and stepped into the adjoining lounge. She followed. "You've been reborn too, haven't you?" she asked suddenly. "Does it matter?" I replied. She stiffened, then lifted her chin. "Ethan abandoned me for you. Are you really not affected by that?" I kept my tone steady. "Why should I be?" Her expression twisted with anger. "He threw you into that damned Walker family. You know what they're like. His mother's a snake, and Jason's no saint either." "Watch your words," I said coldly. Her lip curled in mockery. "Oh right, I forgot. You're the precious Miss Walker now. Must be nice, having the whole family wrapped around your finger." "Relationships work both ways," I replied evenly. "You get back what you give." "Ha," she scoffed bitterly. "There it is, the perfect princess tone I hate so much. What makes you so special, huh?" She stepped closer, her voice rising. "In our last life, you were the one the Owens family chose to adopt. You grew up in luxury, married Ethan, had everything. And in this life, you ended up in the Walker household, and still everyone loves you. Even Ethan can't forget you. Why? What do you have that I don't?" I watched her, careful to keep my distance. "You're mistaken. Ethan doesn't love me. He loves you. You two are even engaged." Lily threw her head back and laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "Love me? Don't kid yourself. The one he can't forget, the real woman he worships, isn't me. It's the original owner of this necklace." With shaking hands, she yanked a delicate silver chain from around her neck, the small key-shaped pendant glinting faintly under the light. Her smile was twisted, almost grotesque. "Do you remember that day outside the orphanage?" she asked. "You saved a boy who was about to drown. He was wearing expensive clothes, remember? When you ran off to find the headmistress, his family came for him, and I pretended to be you. I took this necklace when they gave it to me." She clenched the pendant in her fist, tears pooling in her eyes. "He said he'd come back for me, so I waited and waited, but when he finally returned, he brought you home instead. You were living the life that should have been mine. I couldn't stand it. So I hinted things to Ethan, made him notice me. But later—" Her voice broke, turning sharp and venomous. "Later, I slipped up. I said too much. His mother wanted me gone. And Jason nearly beat me to death. He knew. He knew I'd left him in that alley that day. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have run. I wouldn't have caused everything that happened after." Her words tumbled out, drenched in hate and guilt, and for a long moment I just stared at her in silence. The truth I'd never known finally unraveled before me, ugly, cruel, and yet inevitable. Fortunately, everything could still begin again. But now, Ethan said he didn't want to be engaged anymore. Once, in his eyes, there had been only Lily, but at that moment, I finally understood it all. So that was it. The one Ethan had been searching for across lifetimes wasn't me. His regret had never been about Lily. It had always been about her, the girl he believed he'd found too late in his past life. Poor Lily Owens. Even after being reborn, she was still so naive. Ethan Owens had never truly been infatuated with me, Emily Walker, for who I was. What he loved was the status, the untouchable glow of the Walker family's heiress. That was the only thing he'd ever chased, the thing forever out of his reach. Whether it was Emily Walker or Lily Owens, his obsession was never about love. It was about conquest. In our past life, Lily had borne the title of the Walker family's adopted daughter. Even if she wasn't cherished, the refinement and aura of that position made her shine like a distant moon, something Ethan could only look up to, never hold. But in this life, the roles were reversed. That unreachable light had shifted from her to me. I glanced past Lily toward the doorway, where Ethan was standing, his face pale with disbelief, frozen like a man struck by lightning. I shook my head slowly. "You were wrong." "Wrong?" Lily's voice cracked. "What am I wrong about? What gives you the right to stand there and judge me? Her words were cut off by Ethan's furious shout. "You lied to me, you manipulative bitch. If it weren't for you, how the hell would I be in this mess?" His bloodshot eyes glared down at her, rage and shame twisting his face. Outside, thunder rolled, a storm brewing. I turned on my heel and walked out, quietly shutting the door behind me. At the end of the hallway, Jason stood beneath the soft amber light, his expression calm and patient, as if he'd been waiting for a long time. But when our eyes met, he smiled gently. No hint of impatience in his gaze. "Let's go, Jason," I said quickly. He nodded, falling into step beside me. Not long after, news spread that Lily Owens had stolen confidential documents from Owens Corporation and sold them to a rival company. The scandal sent the entire Owens family into chaos, on the brink of collapse. The cause? Ethan had broken off their engagement and even discussed arranging her marriage abroad to smooth things over with investors. Lily had completely lost her mind. If she couldn't have it, she'd destroy it. She defected to the competition, handing over Owens's internal trade secrets. When I first heard the news, just 2 months before a major bidding round, I wasn't even surprised. Whether in the past or in this life, Lily had always been the same. Selfish, deceitful, and treacherous. I had brushed it off when Jason mentioned it to me, laughing lightly before letting it go. I never imagined that the Owens family's misfortunes weren't over yet. A few weeks later, another headline shook the business world. Ethan Owens had been hospitalized. He'd been stabbed by Lily. According to witnesses, she hadn't even tried to run. The Owens family had caught her almost immediately. At first they'd been soft-hearted, hoping to persuade her to turn herself in, but Lily had only grown more hysterical. She screamed that Mrs. Owens was to blame. "If it weren't for you, that old witch, Ethan would never have tried to marry me off." When Mrs. Owens stepped forward to calm her, Lily snapped. She pulled out a knife and lunged. Ethan threw himself between them to protect his mother. By the time Lily tried to pull the blade back, it was already too late. Now Ethan lay in a hospital bed, his condition uncertain. The Owens family, finally done shielding her, turned her in to the police. Charged with corporate espionage and attempted murder, Lily Owens's future was sealed. She would spend the rest of her life behind bars. A year later, Luna Corporation went public on the International Stock Exchange. The Walker family hosted a grand celebration in my honor, inviting powerful figures from both the political and business worlds. I smiled with composure, conversing gracefully with distinguished guests. Everywhere I turned, I was met with praise and admiration. As I raised my glass, my eyes drifted to a corner of the room. There, half hidden by the glittering crowd, stood Ethan Owens. His tailored suit still tried to whisper wealth, but the cut was outdated, and his once proud posture looked uncertain, awkward. For the first time in a long while, I looked at him without anger, without nostalgia, just quiet, unshakable distance. The collar of Ethan's suit was frayed, the fabric at the seams visibly worn. I gave him only a brief glance before turning away. The Owens family had only been invited to the gala because Mrs. Owens had personally gone to beg for it. A night like this, filled with political and corporate elites, was their last desperate attempt to cling to any remaining connection. Out of old neighborly sentiment, Mrs. Walker had reluctantly agreed to let them attend. Now, the Owens family was drowning in debt and had long been forced out of the high-end district where they once lived. When the ball began, I declined several dance invitations. After mingling for a while, I slipped away as the crowd began to thin, stepping out onto the balcony to breathe in the cool night air. The breeze brushed against my face, crisp and faintly scented with roses from the garden below. I was lost in thought when I sensed someone approach. Turning slightly, I saw Ethan Owens, his presence quiet but intense. "Emily," he said softly, his voice trembling with emotion. "You've come back, haven't you? I knew it. We were together for so many years. I'd recognize you anywhere. You can't fool me." The wind seemed to pause for a moment, suspended between us. He took a step closer, lowering his voice to a hoarse whisper. "Back at the orphanage, you could have chosen me. You could have reached out your hand. Why didn't you?" I slowly turned to face him, meeting his gaze without wavering. "Because I wanted to choose a path that didn't include you," I said quietly. "And you made the same choice, didn't you?" The words fell like shards of ice, piercing straight through him. Ethan staggered back, his face pale beneath the moonlight. His lips trembled as if to argue, but no sound came out. Because he knew I was right. He had been the first to turn away, to choose a life without me, so what right did he have now to ask why I'd done the same? After a long silence, he finally turned and walked off. His shoulders were slumped, his steps unsteady, as though all the strength had drained from his body. Even after his figure disappeared into the shadows, I found myself still staring after him, unmoving. "Emily." The familiar, gentle voice came from behind me. Low, calm, and comforting. I turned and saw Jason Walker standing there. He approached quietly, his eyes glancing briefly in the direction Ethan had gone. Before returning to me, he handed me a glass of warm honey water. "Are you tired?" he asked softly, his tone filled with simple, genuine concern. I accepted the glass, letting its warmth seep into my palms. I looked up at his sharp, handsome profile, then back toward the glittering ballroom where Mrs. Walker was gracefully conversing with guests. "I'm not tired," I said with a small smile. Leaning gently against his shoulder, I whispered, "Jason, you know what? My life right now, it's really good." He hummed softly, listening. "I have a mother who, though strict, always respects me. I have a brother who's stood before me all these years, shielding me from every storm." The night air felt softer somehow, and for the first time, the warmth that filled my heart didn't feel fleeting or fragile, it felt real. All the pain, betrayal, and regret from the past belonged only to the past now. In this life, I wished only one thing for myself: to shine brilliantly.